Well, hello there, I'm Kaz. Today's title was tricky to review. And by tricky, I mean it was difficult to find a way to talk about the series of which this title is a part of, given the vast amount of recognition the series has earned over its near 20-year lifespan, not to mention the background surrounding all of it, without turning it into a massive history lesson of the entire franchise. I'm of course talking about Shin Megami Tensei.
Sorry, let me correct that. It's Megami Tensei. Why is it called that even though that Shin Megami Tensei is labeled on every one of the games? Well, in 1986, a novel called Digital Devil Story Reincarnation of the Goddess, the first in a trilogy, was written by Aya Natishitani. In 1987, a little Japanese company called Atlus made a game called Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei, a dungeon crawler that was based off the aforementioned novel. Interestingly enough, the first game was not published by Atlus, it was published by Namco Bandai. Megami Tensei's gameplay can be best described as Pokemon but with a more mature tone to it. And challenge. With a better plot. Since its inception, it has been referred to as the third quintessential JRPG series along with Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. Unlike those series, the multitude of Megami Tensei spin-offs have received vast amounts of praise from critics and gamers alike, sometimes even more so than the main entries. Persona 4 or Devil Survivor anyone? Which brings us to today's title. Originally a spin-off of the main series released in 1997 on the Sega Saturn, Devil Summoner Soul Hackers was originally intended to be localized on the PlayStation's release, but Sony refused to let them. 16 years later, it has finally been remade for the Nintendo 3DS and released outside of Japan for the very first time.
So, demonic spawn or soul-assailingly sweet? Let's hack our way into Devil Summoner Soul Hackers.
Firstly, I'd like to apologize for the video quality you're about to see. I had to record it myself because there was no good online footage for the 3DS version, so please excuse the guerrilla-style videography. With that said, the story begins with you, a citizen of Amami City and hacker from a group called Spookies, who, for lack of a better word, hacks his way into a beta called Paradigm X, where a coyote spirit named Kina warns about a future catastrophe and sends you on a vision quest to live through someone else's life before they die. This person fights a shadow organization called the Phantom Society with demons by summoning devils from a gun-shaped computer called a Gump, and tries to download a program which also contains a demon which is the key to...
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing at first, isn't it? And all of this? It happens in the first half hour alone. From there, you unravel a conspiracy involving the use of a special computer chip and a sudden disease in Amami City that hits people that are connected to the Paradigm X beta while your friend Hitomi is possessed by a white-haired demon named Namisa. There's a ton more than that just going on in the plot, but somehow Soul Hackers make sense out of all of it to form a solid narrative. For 1997, this is pretty good writing, no doubt thanks to the solid localization effort, and with a date like that, it's even more impressive how the game tackles the benefits and problems that have risen with the growing reliance on digital information. Remember, in the 1990s, the internet was still relatively new to the public despite decades of use by governments. Heck, most people refer to it as the information superhighway because of the massive amount of information it allowed to be shared between networks. And I guarantee you, at that time, no one would believe that the information transferred through this highway could lead to benefits like online markets and fast, reliable long-distance communication via electronic mail, or issues like identity theft, internet compulsion, predators, and most terrifying of all, 9gag.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Soul Hackers fully embraces and explores the good and the bad of almost everything that's come out of the internet, like telling yourself one more minute on YouTube before you realize that you're an hour late for work, or always relying on spell check when you're writing your next script, lols. Though speaking of spell check, the translation is spotty at times, with dialogue skipping a line, or lack of proper grammatical structure in sentences. The delivery is occasionally rushed, though it's still done well as one would expect from an Atlus title, and there's a handy digest to keep you informed of your goal if you miss something. It's also very funny at times too. I mean, how many games will let you tell the demon that God created us just because he felt like it, or defeating a monkey by solving riddles? As enjoyable as this all may sound though, it's not all excellent storytelling. The main character is silent, yet has a sister, parents, and friends, not to mention colleagues, and never says a word to them. I know most Megami Tensei titles tend to have a silent lead, but I still have to ask, why in this game of all of them would this make any sense to execute it as such? You have an established background, goals, group associations, and relationship with other people. There's no need to project us onto this blank slate. This is a perfect example of when not to use a silent protagonist. Thankfully, this blender is made up with the true star of the story, Namisa, a mysterious demon who often refers to herself in the third person. She's charming, smart, sassy, plays off her host Hitomi well, and is just a ton of fun to be around. There's a reason why she gets top billing on the cover and not you. She is the star of this game, and she shines bright throughout the entire adventure. If this was the original writing in 1997, then time has only improved it. Soul Hackers may not speak as loudly as its contemporaries, but it makes up for it with a compelling leading lady and a world parallel to ours that is both relatable and engaging. The question now is whether or not the rest of the game holds up just as well. Devil Summoner Soul Hackers is an old-school first-person dungeon crawler. You move on a grid base from point A to B, where you most likely trigger an event or fight a boss. If you're familiar with the Megami Tensei series, you should be familiar with that and the many demons roaming around that you can talk to. Talking with demons can result in being healed, enemies fleeing from battle, being instantly attacked, learning new information on your way to the end goal, negotiating for an item with their legions, or instantly joining you free of charge. It's by no means the only method, but it's certainly the best one to get them to join your ranks, the success of which will depend on the moon phases. Some demons may not ever join you, while other times the same response will get you a different reaction from the same type of demons. It's based on their personality types, not their species, which leads me to the loyalty system. Unlike several other Megami Tensei titles, demons don't level up in the Devil Summoner series. Instead, they each have a loyalty meter which goes up or down depending on how you treat them. If you give them the right commands and items pertaining to their personality, they'll become and stay happy. If you force them around and never reward them, it'll go down, and you'll want to keep these demons happy because happier and loyal demons are stronger than those that aren't. That and those with lower loyalty might disobey you or even leave your party, so it quickly becomes a priority to keep them happy. Though if it ever gets that low, there's a good chance you're better off using them to make a new demon via demon fusion. If you've ever played a Megami Tensei title, you know this already by heart. Pick 2 or 3 devils to fuse together to form a more powerful spawn. This is the key to surviving in Soul Hackers, creating the most powerful demons that you can given your level limits. And it's a good thing too, because for the first couple of hours, combat can be overwhelming when you're ill-equipped and lacking in magic. The battles are much faster than your typical turn-based combat, aided by the fact that there's a time-saving auto-battle feature which cuts down tremendously on the time spent in battle in an encounter-heavy dungeon crawler like this. In addition to keeping your team healthy in between battles and your demons happy, you'll also need to keep an eye on your magnetite count. No, it's not a misspelled magnemite, it's the source of power for your demons in your party. Without it, they can't survive out of the gump and you can't summon them. It adds to Devil Summoner Soul Hackers' old school level of challenge, and by old school, I mean it in every meaning the word applies to the unforgiving dungeon crawlers of old. This is not a game for the faint at heart, but if you're looking for a challenge, Soul Hackers will be right up your alley. If it ever gets too challenging for you, you can turn down the difficulty level, or if you're looking for a real challenge, you can heat things up during the middle of battle. Yes, you can change the difficulty up or down even as you're getting pummeled or destroying a boss. It's still a rather brutal game, but never to the point where you could call it unforgiving. Now this being a remake, Soul Hackers had a few upgrades to its 32-bit counterparts. For one, there's Namichi, a new option that lets you collect D-Souls via Street Pass which you can turn into special demons. The more Street Pass hits you get, the more D-Souls you collect. You can also trade in play coins if you're the lonely type like me, and you can give Namichi some D-Souls to evolve into different forms, which in turn will allow you to get more demons to use and fuse. Speaking of which, I should mention at this point that this remake also includes 30 new demons that were not present in the original. So what else was added to this remake? Well, there's voice acting, which we'll get to in a moment, new characters appearing after clearing the game along with an additional dungeon, a few new animations for enemy and attack animations for sword and spells, and an animated opening. I've also been told that the 3DS version loads faster, and though I don't own the original, it does load very fast. All of these changes help make the 16-year-old game all the more enjoyable, but the most helpful change is the dungeon map displayed on the bottom screen that shows where you haven't gone, traps, and doors. Something as simple as this makes the exploration of the dungeon so much easier and faster. It turns something that in other games within the genre is often a chore to do into a gleeful goal of searching every square for items and new demons to befriend and fuse. Needless to say, you'll be spending upwards of 30 hours completing Soul Hackers, even more depending on how invested you get into the demon fusion system, customizing your gump, and the world of Paradigm X. However, for as many good redesigns as this remake does, there's a few design choices that haven't had the same amount of attention given to them. For example, you can place points to improve your magic, but you never learn any magic, and aside from some equipment that requires your magic to be at a certain level, it's entirely pointless. The overworld cities are a bit clunky to navigate to, but I can't really think of any first-person dungeon crawler that's really handled its overworld that well. There's also one dungeon which is particularly frustrating because if you don't go in the right room, you get teleported right back to the very beginning and you have to do it 3 times. But in all fairness, it pays off with a rather touching moment for one of the characters. For whatever issues arise from the 16-year-old title, Devil Summoner Soul Hackers always manages to be rather absorbing. You'll find yourself saying, okay, just one more dungeon, then several hours later you'll remind yourself that you have an economics exam that you should be studying for. I said, you have an economics exam that you should be studying for. Get back to work, you slacker.
Seriously? I can't have a 5-minute break before I go back to studying? What's wrong with you?
For God's sake, I am you.
Well, excuse me. You. This joke is very confused.
Finally, the presentation. To reiterate, I don't own a Sega Saturn, so I can't say much on how will Devil Summoner Soul Hacker use the system's power, although if I recall, the Sega Saturn had the most complex design of the 3 consoles at the time. However, I do own a 3DS, and after seeing the incredibly impressive Shin Megami Tensei IV in action, Soul Hackers leaves a lot to be desired. Certain effects look slightly better than the Sega Saturn original, artwork is noticeably improved, and the new opening is lovely, but the in-game battles are not exactly impressive. Enemies almost always remain static, and backgrounds are, shall we say, trippy? There is some nice attention to detail, like character boxes moving when they dodge, and enemy health being lower shown with yellow and red numbers when you attack, but the cleaner interface doesn't change the fact that it's not appealing to one's eyes, nor are the rough textures for dungeons. Also, cutscenes look like they were taken from the Saturn version without the resolution adjusted for the 3DS's screen. As for the sound, there's no Japanese voice acting, you're given only the North American recordings, which is disappointing, but to their credit, they do a great job with the material they're given. Even the NPCs that sell you your equipment sound authentic and professional, though it's worth noting that the Japanese version has more NPC dialogue, several of which was cut during localization. The cast is full of Atlus familiars who give their usual great performances, with the Mrs. voice actor stealing the show as she just gets lost in this character. She alone is worth the price of admission. The soundtrack is mostly an update of the Saturn version with a few new tracks like the opening, and while they aren't particularly memorable, they are well composed and fit the situation they're placed in when called upon. Overall, it may not look or sound that impressive, but like the rest of the package, there is a certain appeal to Soul Hackers with one part that really shines through.
Devil Summoner Soul Hackers is undeniably a Shin Megami Tensei spin-off, with just a few minor polishes that make it a great remake. However, if you're going in expecting, say, Persona levels of depth and polish, you're gonna end up disappointed. However, if you are going in expecting a dungeon crawler that's just a little bit different, or you're a huge Megami Tensei fan, then Devil Summoner Soul Hackers is for you. It's a devilish good time. Now, normally I don't give remakes their own scores because they're remakes. You know whether or not they're good to get because of the original scores that they were given when they were first released. But since it's the very first time that it's been released in North America, I'm gonna let that rule slide to give Devil Summoner Soul Hackers an 8 out of 10. So once again, thank you for watching, and until next time, game on, my friends. Hello there, I'm Kaz. And this is just going to be a very quick update to the channel, which is probably going to upset a lot of you. For the next few weeks, let's say 3 to 5, hopefully 5 at the most, there's going to be no new content coming out, because I have finals coming up. In fact, by the time you see this video, I'll probably have a few of them done. But the point is, they're a priority for me, not the videos right now. Once they're all done, though, once I am finally cleared of that problem, I will be getting to the 1,000 subscriber special. What's it going to be about? Well, most of you seem to want me to do another top 10, which I've been dying to do, but either haven't found the good subject for it, or haven't had the time to hammer out the script for it. However, this top 10 is going to be a bit different, because I'm going to be taking into some of your suggestions that you've told me about, some of the things that you want to see for the 1,000 subscriber special. So this is going to be a very strange top 10, involving one of my favorite series. One that I've avoided talking about for a long, long time. And a little bit of a story of how I got into gaming because of a little game. Which game, you may ask?